My wife mocked my business and humiliated me. Then she posted my failures on Facebook for likes. Her comment, "He calls this a career?" 2 weeks later, I got invited to a global conference as a keynote speaker. I don't know where to even begin. This feels more like a slow-motion car crash I couldn't stop watching than just a bad patch in a marriage. I guess if I had to boil it down, we stopped being on the same team somewhere along the way, and when things got tough, she picked the wrong side. My name's Trevor. I'm 43, and I've lived most of my adult life in Raleigh, North Carolina. I used to work a well-paying but unfulfilling job in finance. I had the office, the retirement plan, the bi-weekly paycheck, but I also had ulcers, insomnia, and no real sense of purpose. After 15 years, I walked away. I wanted to build something of my own. The plan was to start a consulting business helping small businesses scale up digitally. It was niche, but something I genuinely believed in. Serena, my wife of 12 years, was skeptical but didn't stop me. At least not at first. She works as a nurse administrator at one of the larger hospitals in Wake County. She's smart, ambitious, and has always liked order, stability, predictability. We were never the couple to take risks. We had a routine: Friday movie nights, Sunday cleaning, yearly vacations to Myrtle Beach. So when I told her I was leaving my job, I could feel her panic even if she didn't say anything at first. The first year of the business was difficult. I'd spend hours cold emailing prospects, offering free audits just to prove myself. Some months I made $2,000. Some months I made nothing. We weren't in danger of losing the house, but we had to cut back. That meant no more takeout 3 times a week. No new handbags. Fewer trips. It shouldn't have been a big deal. But for Serena, it was. It started small. "Maybe you should pick up a part-time job while your business grows," she'd say over breakfast. Or, "My friends' husbands are all getting promotions. It must be nice to feel secure." I told myself she was just scared. That once I landed a big client, she'd feel better. That once she saw results, she'd remember why she believed in me to begin with. Except she never really did. I turned our spare bedroom into my office. I bought a second-hand desk off Craigslist, set up a whiteboard, and hung some motivational quotes. I worked 10 to 12-hour days, trying to make something out of nothing. I didn't expect her to praise me every day, but what I didn't expect was disdain. She'd walk by while I was in a Zoom call and mutter, "Playtime's over." Or if I told her about a lead, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Let me know when they actually pay you." Still, I kept at it. I landed small contracts. Helped a bakery rebrand. A local gym boost their online bookings. It was slow growth, but it was growth. Then came the Facebook post. I didn't see it at first. A friend texted me, "Hey man, is everything okay at home?" Confused, I logged in. Serena had posted a photo of my little office setup with a sarcastic caption, "He calls this a career?" Faced with tears of joy, 3 years, and this is what we've got. Someone told him the garage sale dreams need to stop. Hashtag wife support group, hashtag when will he grow up. I felt sick. There were 47 comments under the post. Her friends laughing, a few pitying her, some jokingly offering job leads for me. One person wrote, "Time to trade him in, girl." And Serena replied, "Just waiting for the upgrade," winking face. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't even know how. I just sat there in the dark thinking, she doesn't just doubt me, she's ashamed of me. Not quietly, not privately, but publicly. For laughs. A couple days later, I got an email that changed everything. An old client, Haruto Nakamura, someone I helped 2 years prior when he was trying to bring his family's business from Kyoto into the U.S. market. He thanked me for the help I gave when no one else did. He said he'd been watching my progress quietly, admiring the consistency. He was now on the board of a global entrepreneur conference in Berlin. "Your story is one that many need to hear," he wrote. "We'd like to invite you to speak as a keynote at this year's conference." I almost didn't believe it. I reread the email 5 times before it sank in. It wasn't some spammy invite or sketchy scam. This was real. They'd cover my travel and lodging. All I had to do was say yes. And I did. I didn't tell Serena. Not yet. Instead, I buried myself in work. I built a difficult presentation telling the story of failure, slow growth, and perseverance. I practiced in front of mirrors, in front of recordings. I watched TED Talks until my voice was raw. When the day came, I flew to Berlin. Stayed at a beautiful hotel near the Brandenburg Gate. I'd never been out of the country before. It was overwhelming and exhilarating. The event itself? Life-changing. Over 600 entrepreneurs, investors, and thought leaders in the room. I spoke about resilience, about building when no one claps for you, about the silent judgment you have to push through. I didn't name Serena, but I didn't need to. I told them, sometimes the harshest critics are the ones you sleep next to, but they don't define you. Your work does, and your belief in it. I got a standing ovation. The event went viral online. The organizers posted a clip that got over 2 million views. It landed on LinkedIn, Twitter, even some business blogs. Suddenly, people were reaching out, not just for advice, but for paid consultations, contracts, and even a podcast interview. And then, of course, Serena saw it. She didn't say anything to me at first, but she posted a comment under one of the conference videos. Proud of my amazing husband, red heart, you've always had the drive. I didn't respond, because the truth is, she hadn't been proud. She hadn't supported me. She had laughed at me, mocked me, publicly humiliated me. Now that the world clapped, she wanted to clap too. But it was too late for that. I didn't bring it up to her right away. I figured if she wanted to talk about it, she would. But for a few days, she acted like the Facebook post had never happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, just this strange shift in tone. Suddenly, she was more attentive. She asked me if I needed help packing for my next client trip. Started cooking dinner again. One night, she even sat beside me on the couch and asked, "So, Berlin was pretty incredible, huh?" I nodded. "Yeah, it was." She paused like she was fishing for something. Maybe a reaction, maybe forgiveness. "People really liked your speech." I read some of the comments. Sounded like it touched a lot of folks. I looked at her. I didn't know what she expected me to say. "It did, I think." She nodded slowly, then said, "You know, I always believed you'd land on your feet." I just stared at her. I wish I could say I blew up at her then. I gave some passionate speech about how her lack of support nearly broke me. But I didn't. I didn't have the energy for that. It was like talking to someone who wanted to rewrite the last 3 years just because it was finally convenient. And it kept happening. Over the next couple of weeks, she started talking to me like she had always been on my side. She shared my conference clip on her Instagram story with the caption, "My husband, the keynote speaker, smiling face with hard eyes, hashtag so proud, hashtag power couple goals." It was surreal. I had a few friends reach out privately. People who saw the old Facebook post and now saw her new tone. One messaged me and said, "Is everything okay?" She flipped the narrative real quick. I didn't even know how to respond. Meanwhile, my business was finally taking off in a way I had only hoped it might. After Berlin, I was contacted by a mid-sized firm out of Chicago that wanted to bring me on as a strategic advisor for a 6-month project. That alone would pay more than my old job ever did in a full year. I started bringing on part-time help, hired a freelance assistant, outsourced some of the marketing. I was working 14-hour days again, but now it felt different. Like I was finally building something real. And Serena? She seemed to be enjoying the ride. She started dropping my name at dinner parties again. "Trevor just got back from Berlin," she'd say to her sister over the phone. It was a huge international business conference. He spoke right after this tech billionaire from Sweden. She'd say it like she was proud, but it felt hollow. Like she was proud of the results, not the process, not the sacrifices, not the man who kept going when she stopped believing in him. I started sleeping in the guest room again, not because we fought, but because I needed space. Emotional distance. She asked once, "Is this about us?" I told her I just needed better sleep. She didn't push, probably because she knew the real answer. I couldn't help but remember the night I saw that Facebook post. The sick twist in my stomach. The utter shame. The loneliness of being made into a joke by the person who was supposed to be my safe place. And now, suddenly, I was supposed to forget that? Because the story had a happy twist? I started journaling again. Something I hadn't done since the early days of the business. I needed somewhere to unload the emotional weight I'd been carrying for years. One night, I wrote, "What do you do when someone mocks the seeds you plant, then shows up clapping when the tree grows?" I didn't have an answer. Around that time, my old college buddy Derek came into town. We grabbed a beer at this small bar near Glenwood South. He'd seen the conference video too and wanted to congratulate me in person. He was always one of the few friends who supported the business from day one. As we caught up, he asked how things were at home. I hesitated, then said, "Complicated." He gave me a knowing look and said, "I saw what Serena posted. Back when things weren't going great." I nodded. "Yeah, that wasn't a great day. You don't have to tell me everything," he said. "But you don't look happy, man. Even with all the success." That stuck with me. Because he was right. I wasn't. The success was validating. The money, the recognition, the growth I had dreamed about for years. But when it finally came, it also brought clarity. I realized how much pain I had buried to get here, and how alone I'd felt for most of the journey. At one point, I thought maybe success would heal everything. That once I made it, the resentment would vanish, and Serena and I could start over. But it didn't work that way. If anything, it made the divide more visible. It showed me the difference between someone clapping for you and someone clapping because it looks good for them. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had been trying to prove something not just to myself, but to her. And maybe even to the people she had mocked me in front of. But now that I had, all I felt was tired. There were no apologies, no real conversations, just rewrites, rebranding. Like she was trying to whitewash 3 years of cold glances, sarcastic jabs, and public shaming. And I was supposed to just smile through it. I started noticing little shifts in my behavior, things I never used to do. I stopped sharing the day-to-day details of my work with Serena. Not because I was trying to be distant, but because I genuinely didn't want to give her more ammunition. That instinct had never existed before. In the early days of our marriage, I used to tell her everything. Now, when she asked how my day was, I'd just say, "It was good," and leave it at that. She seemed to sense the change too, but instead of asking directly, she started overcompensating, making my favorite meals again, buying little gifts, nothing big, just things she thought I'd like. A new mouse pad, a fancy notepad, a neck pillow for when I traveled. It was like she was trying to skip the apology part and jump straight to reconciliation. But I couldn't forget how it felt being ridiculed for trying. Not failing, trying. One evening, I came home from a client dinner in Charlotte and found Serena waiting for me in the kitchen. It was almost 11 p.m., but she'd clearly been sitting there a while, still in her scrubs. A bottle of wine was open, and her phone was face down on the table. She looked up at me with this cautious smile. "Hey," she said. "I thought we could talk." I nodded slowly and sat down across from her. She poured me a glass without asking. "You've been different lately," she said. I didn't respond. I mean, not in a bad way. Just distant. Quiet. Still, I stayed silent. I wasn't trying to punish her. I just wanted to hear where this was going. She sighed. "Look, I know things were rough. And I wasn't the nicest person. I got scared. Watching the money dry up, the credit cards creep up. I panicked. That doesn't excuse it, but," she looked down into her wine. "I guess I didn't realize how much it would hurt you when I made that post." Her voice was quiet now. "I thought I was being funny. Vented to the wrong people. I should have said all of that to you instead. Privately. I'm sorry. It wasn't the grand apology I'd hoped for." There was no ownership of the deeper betrayal. No mention of the laughter, the comments, the way she'd basked in the attention at my expense. But it was something. I stared at her for a while before finally speaking. "You made me feel like a joke. Not just to strangers. To my own wife." She winced. "I know. Do you?" I asked. "Because you didn't delete the post. You didn't take it down. You left it up for weeks." "I didn't know how," she said weakly. "Once people had seen it, I figured, what's the point?" That hit harder than I expected. Not because she didn't know how to use Facebook, she was on it all the time, but because she didn't try. She didn't care enough to correct it once it stopped being funny. "I was alone in that," I said. "You were supposed to be my partner. You embarrassed me, Serena." She nodded, eyes glossy now. "I know. I really do." And maybe she did. Or maybe she just knew what to say now that things were going well again. The hardest part about healing from something like this isn't the anger. It's the confusion. The mental tug-of-war between the memories of who someone was and the reality of who they've become. Serena wasn't always this way. For a long time, she was warm, encouraging, even playful. But somewhere in those 3 years of struggle, something changed in her. Or maybe it changed in me. Maybe we both changed, just in opposite directions. My therapist, who I'd started seeing just after Berlin, told me something that stuck. Sometimes, people love the version of you that makes them feel secure. The moment you evolve beyond that, it disrupts their safety net. Serena had loved the version of me with a corporate title, steady income, and zero risk. The man who came home at 6 p.m. sharp and let her plan the vacations. The moment I decided to take a risk, even for something meaningful, she panicked. And when panic turned into resentment, it came out as cruelty. I think, deep down, she didn't believe I could succeed. Maybe she didn't want me to, because it would mean she was wrong. And now that I had, she didn't know where that left her. The next few weeks were a strange limbo. On the outside, everything looked fine. We still made dinner, still talked about errands, still watched TV on the weekends. But there was a quiet tension under every interaction. A pause before every sentence. Like we were both waiting for something to break, but neither of us wanted to be the one to break it. One morning, she surprised me with breakfast. Pancakes, coffee, the whole thing. I came downstairs and found the table set like it was our anniversary. "I figured we could eat together before you jump into work," she said, trying to sound cheerful. It felt off. I sat down and ate, and thanked her. But halfway through, she said, "Do you ever think we could go back to how things were?" I didn't answer right away. I took a sip of coffee, looked out the window, and finally said, "I don't think we can unlive what we've lived." She stared at her plate. "I don't want to lose you." And that's the thing, I wasn't sure what part of me she wanted to hold on to. The man I used to be? The man I became? Or just the version of me that made her life look better? That morning sat heavy in my chest for days. There was a sadness in Serena's voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Not frustration. Not sarcasm. Just this quiet fear. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't get to me. For all the resentment and emotional bruises, I didn't hate her. I wasn't sure I even stopped loving her completely. I just didn't trust her anymore. And in a marriage, love without trust is like a house built without a foundation. It might stand for a while, but the next storm will tear it to pieces. In the following weeks, I found myself drifting further into my work. My consulting roster has doubled since Berlin. I was traveling more to Atlanta, Denver, even a quick turnaround to Toronto. My calendar filled up fast. Calls, strategy sessions, a few speaking engagements. I was finally in demand. And yet, at night, lying in the guest room of my own house, I felt more alone than ever. Sometimes I'd hear Serena in the hallway after I turned out the lights. Her footsteps are slowing near my door, maybe debating whether to knock or not. She never did, just kept walking. I wondered if she was afraid of hearing something final. There were no big fights, no shouting matches, no accusations flying across the room. Just long silences and awkward kindness. We had become polite strangers in a shared space. One night, while reviewing some client proposals at my desk, I saw her name pop up on my calendar app. She had sent a shared invite. Dinner, just us. Thursday, 7 p.m., at Quince, Glenwood South. A place we hadn't been to in over a year. I hesitated for a while before clicking accept. Thursday came, and I showed up right on time. She was already seated at a small table near the window, dressed nicely, hair done the way she used to when we first dated. She stood when I arrived, awkwardly smoothing out her dress. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We sat. The waiter brought water, and for a few minutes we just read the menus in silence, pretending it was all normal. Then Serena looked up and asked, "Are we okay?" There it was. I set my menu down. "I don't know." She didn't flinch, like she'd been expecting that answer. "I miss us," she said. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Do you miss me, or do you miss what I represent now?" Her face shifted slightly. "Hurt, maybe." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when I was struggling, when I was building this from the ground up, you weren't there." "Not really. You were embarrassed. You mocked me. You made jokes about me online." I said I was sorry, she whispered. "I know, but a few words can't erase years of being dismissed, of feeling like a burden in my own home." She leaned forward slightly. "You weren't a burden. I was just afraid. I watched the bills stack up. I watched you spiral into work and away from me. And I didn't know how to help, so I got angry. I got bitter. I said things I regret every single day." There were tears in her eyes now, but I held my ground. "Do you regret them?" I asked. "Because of what they did to me, or because I proved you wrong?" That hung in the air like smoke. Neither of us moved. Eventually, the food came, but we barely touched it. The conversation had left no appetite. We left the restaurant in silence. She drove separately. When I got home, I went straight upstairs and packed a weekend bag. I told her I had a short client retreat in Asheville, half true, and she nodded without asking questions. I needed time. Space. That weekend in Asheville, I stayed in a small cabin just outside of town. No TV, minimal internet. Just me, a notebook, and the thick quiet of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I journaled every night. Wrote about the years of resentment, the lost intimacy, the way I felt more validated by strangers online than by my own spouse. I also wrote about the moments I missed early Sunday mornings in bed, her laugh when she watched those ridiculous baking shows, the way her hand always found mine in a crowd. Grief is strange that way. It doesn't wait until something is over to show up. Sometimes it arrives while things still look well on the surface, whispering that the end is near. By Sunday, I still didn't have clarity. Just more questions. Could we rebuild trust? Did she want me? Or did she want the version of me the world applauded? And even if she meant her apology, was that enough? I drove home with the windows down, hoping the mountain air would leave something behind in me resolve, or maybe even peace. When I walked in the house, Serena was in the kitchen, sitting at the counter with a book and a cup of tea. She looked up, surprised to see me early. "How was it?" she asked cautiously. "Quiet," I said. "Good thinking time." She nodded and didn't press. The following week, something small but telling happened. I got an offer from a podcast in the UK. Big reach, highly respected. They wanted to record a full episode about my business journey. The host had even done a deep dive into my consulting work. It was a real opportunity to build international credibility. I mentioned it over dinner not to brag, just in passing. Serena looked at me, smiled faintly, and said, "That's amazing, Trev. I hope you tell them the real story. All of it." That caught me off guard. "The real story?" I asked. She looked up from her plate. "The messy parts. The fear. The nights you thought about giving up. Not just the wins. The heart of it." It was the first time she'd said anything that felt real. Not curated. Not performance. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I will." Because she was right. Stories only matter if they're honest. And our story, whatever it was becoming, was still unfinished. The next few weeks after that conversation were quiet. Calmer, in a strange way. Serena seemed to have settled into this muted role in my life, like she wasn't sure what part to play anymore. She didn't try too hard to fix things after that dinner, and I didn't try to provoke anything either. We coexisted. I kept my focus on work. My client list continued to grow, and so did my reputation. The podcast episode aired 2 weeks after the interview. People resonated with the rawness, with the story of building something through failure, shame, and doubt. The host called it the most human entrepreneurial story he'd ever recorded. Then something happened that flipped the final switch in me. I received a formal invitation to join a business accelerator in Amsterdam, fully funded. The catch? It required relocating for 4 months. It was everything I dreamed of. Access to international networks, mentorship from major business figures, a chance to position my company globally. It would take my consulting business from regional recognition to a global platform. I brought it up one night while Serena and I were both in the living room, watching TV. Or pretending to, anyway. I got an offer, I said. Amsterdam. For months. Business accelerator. She blinked. Wow, that's huge. I nodded. It is. Silence stretched between us. She reached for the remote and turned down the volume. Are you thinking of going? I am. She opened her mouth like she was about to argue, but didn't. Instead, she said, and are you thinking about coming back? That question hit hard, because I hadn't made that decision yet. But I knew I needed to. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I once saw as my closest ally, who had become a source of doubt and shame. The woman who laughed behind a screen while I drowned in debt and pressure. And now, the woman who wanted to skip over all that because it was convenient. I don't think so, I said finally. She swallowed. Hard. But she didn't cry. And I think that told me everything. She knew this was coming. The next few weeks were a blur. I met with a lawyer. Quietly. Respectfully. I filed for separation. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Serena was stunned, but didn't protest. We split things down the middle cleanly. We had no kids, which made it easier. She kept the house. I didn't care. When I told her I'd found a furnished apartment in Amsterdam, she didn't ask when I'd be back. Just nodded and said, I hope you find what you're looking for. I already did, I replied. And I built it. The day I left, I stood outside the house one last time. The porch light was on. She watched me from the front window, her arms crossed tightly. We didn't wave. We didn't say goodbye. Amsterdam was everything I hoped it would be and more. The accelerator sharpened my skills and gave my business global visibility. I built partnerships across Europe, spoke at events in Vienna, Zurich, and Paris. I even started mentoring younger entrepreneurs who had once stood where I did, tired, broke, and full of doubt. Then came the moment that really brought everything full circle. The organizers of a major global entrepreneurship summit hosted that year in Chicago contacted me. Not only did they want me to speak again, but they also asked if I would host a panel titled, Building When No One Believes in You. I accepted without hesitation. When I arrived at the venue, I was greeted like a celebrity. My name was on the program, and my face was on banners. I took the stage to applause, told my story again, but this time, with distance, with clarity, with peace. During the panel Q&A, someone in the audience asked, what was the hardest part of your journey? I didn't hesitate. Being doubted by someone I loved, I said. It's one thing to fail in the eyes of strangers. It's another to fail in front of someone who you thought would catch you. The room went quiet. But I'm grateful for it now, I added. Because of that pain, that silence. It built something better than comfort. It built character. The audience applauded again, but more quietly this time. The kind of applause that said, we get it. Afterward, I was networking near the food tables when someone tapped me on the shoulder. A woman in her early 30s, wide-eyed and smiling. You're Trevor Langley, right? Yes. I just wanted to say, I saw your video of the Berlin speech last year. I was thinking of quitting my business. That video stopped me. I kept going. Now I have 4 employees. I smiled. You did the work. That's all you. She shook her head. You showed me it's okay to be doubted. That doesn't have to mean you're wrong. We talked for 10 minutes. She left with a hug and a selfie. And that moment, that was the full circle revenge I never saw coming. Not money. I don't like it. Not even the applause. But impact. Back in Amsterdam, I celebrated the summit with a few new friends from the program. We raised glasses of beer, toasted to survival, grit, and the long road to self-worth. I thought of Serena occasionally, not bitterly, just as a lesson, a necessary wound that scarred over into wisdom. From time to time, I'd still get curious and peek at her social media. She kept things quiet now. No more passive-aggressive captions. No glamorous posts. Just pictures of her dog, her garden, the occasional family dinner. I noticed she never removed that old post, the one where she mocked my business. It was still there, buried in the timeline. But now, it had a new comment underneath it. From me. Just a simple reply. And now, that career employs 10 people, speaks on international stages, and changes lives. Thank you for the motivation. She never responded. She didn't have to. That comment stayed right there, for anyone who came across her timeline to see. No insults. No cruelty. Just a quiet, satisfying truth. The best revenge isn't anger. Its success is so undeniable, even your critics become silent. And in that silence, I found peace.